there's an ecosystem that I can rely on. And I have relied on it. And I've now relied on it for years, which I didn't expect. I will tell you this. When I first started using BuddyBoss, I thought, man, if I could just get one good year out of this platform before I have to go find something else. Because that's what I'd had to do before. I had to go find something else. I haven't had to go find something else. And I thank you so much for that. And I also thank you for the lifetime package.
Hello and welcome to the BuddyBoss podcast, where we dive deep into the strategies that will help you build, launch, and grow your online communities, courses, and memberships. I'm your host, Jason Broderick, marketing manager and head of content here at BuddyBoss. If it's your first time here or you just haven't gotten around to it yet, then click the subscribe button below this video and click that bell icon to make sure you keep up with all the latest content here at BuddyBoss. In today's episode, I'm joined by professional actor and voiceover artist David H. Lawrence XVII from VOHeroes.com. VOHeroes teaches professional actors how to add voiceover to their performance portfolio and helps people outside of show business to sidegrade into a voiceover career. Outside of BuddyBoss, David is also the founder of the iOS app Rehearsal Pro, which has turned over more than $1 million over its lifetime. David tells us about how developing his first app cost him over $100,000 in time and resources and took a year to get the first MVP version into the App Store. How trying to run his business inside Facebook groups proved to be a disaster, with every change serving them and not you. And how discovering BuddyBoss helped unify all of the tools that he was already using into a platform that he's been relying on now for years. Let's dive in. David, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me. So before I dive in to talk to you about your site a little bit, just give our listeners and our watchers, give a little bit of backstory about you as an actor.
First of all, I want to thank you very much for making my acting life so much better. It's like, what I do for a living is a combination of performance, on mic, on camera, and training other actors how to do voiceover. And I started in radio. So when I grew up, I had a radio under my pillow. I would listen to distant stations, and I was just enamored of the whole world of radio. Started in radio and was in radio until my late 40s. And then got this crazy, wild, hey, what if I went to Hollywood and, this beautiful face and this amazing physique, and I saw if maybe I could do it on camera. What do you think of that? And my friends were like, have you lost your mind? What's wrong with you? Because radio is one of those businesses where the phrase that's used is there's 99 jobs and 100 people to fill them. So somebody's always on the beach. And television and film is like there's 99 jobs and 80, 100,000 million people to fill them. You were an actor for a while, so you know how tough it is. But I'm really dedicated when I set out to do something. And I trained and I took my time. I didn't rush things. I didn't start to judge whatever success I was having or not having too early. And I luckily got a break with a show called Heroes, which changed my life and led to hundreds of other shows and projects. And so it was a second act in life for me. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So you were in Heroes. I know you from a couple of other things as well. So what then led you to create your site, VOHeroes? What was the genesis of that?
In the mid-2000s, as I was training to do on-camera stuff, my survival job, my other job, was doing a syndicated radio show and voiceover. And I was at some meeting I'd already joined SAG-AFTRA. Before it was called SAG-AFTRA, I joined, and I was at a meeting at the Union Hall, and I was sending in an audition that I had gone over into the corner with my new iPhone, and I had recorded with voice memo, and I was sending it to my assistant to convert to an MP3 to send in. And this woman was sitting next to me, and she's like, "What are you doing? What did you just do? Were you over there plotting the overthrow of a government somewhere? What was going on over in the corner?" And, I told her, and she said, wait, you do voiceover? And during a break, she asked to hear my demo, and she goes, who did that for you? And I said, well, I did that. That's what I do. And she's like, you do? And I had no idea that there was a ripe market for demos, for voiceover demos, production that's competitive. I mean, people were like sitting in their closet. Not that there's anything wrong with sitting in your closet doing voiceover. That's what a lot of people do. And they're making these little voice pieces and putting music that they'd stolen off of YouTube on underneath, and they just didn't sound very good. They weren't very competitive. And I'd been doing radio and voiceover and demo production for decades, and there was a market for it. And I thought, not only will I do that, but I'll also teach people how to do that. And then they started saying, well, what do you do with voiceover? And I'm like, commercials and IVR systems, phone systems, and audio books. And they're like, you know how to do all that? So it became one of those things where people were saying, you should teach this. And they just kind of pulled me into that process. So it started with demos. Then it was like, I think the first class I taught was on commercials, how to do commercials. And it just grew from there. And VOHeroes was after 10 years of another brand name that was not very good and it required me to spell it for people when I was ready to make a change. And coincidental with the change to VOHeroes, I went looking for a new platform. I looked at a lot of different options, and those moments in life when you come across something that you feel as though was built exactly for you. Nobody else, just you. Like somebody was listening to you while you were sleeping and murmuring in your sleep, oh, I wish I had a way to combine my classes with my discussion groups on my site. And BuddyBoss presented itself to me, and I started tearing up. I really did. I kid you not. I was like, if this doesn't suck, this is going to be great. Because all of these promises are made all the time, right? You go to some platform site and they're like, we're the best in the world. We've revolutionized everything. We're awesome. And then you install it and it's horrifying. Whereas BuddyBoss was the opposite experience. So it came along at just the right time, and we've been branded this way for about 5 years now. So I think I've meandered beyond the scope of your question, but it just led into that.
No, one of the things I wanted to that's awesome to hear. Firstly, like, thank you very much. I've only been with BuddyBoss about 1.5 years, but I was a BuddyBoss customer before then for a very long time. And the listeners and watchers of the podcast are probably bored of me telling this story now at this stage, so I'll tell it once more. Which is, I had the very same experience that I had 3 Facebook groups of about 50,000 in size each, and was struggling to manage the community through all of those Facebook groups. Innovation was stifled, and somehow one day I stumbled onto this thing called BuddyBoss, and it totally changed the way I run my community, totally changed the way I run my business, and it totally changed my life, really, because I've gone on to obviously working for BuddyBoss too, and helping other people to discover the power and the potential in the platform. So it's always amazing to hear stories like yours of other people doing the same. Could you tell me, back in the day when you were inside Facebook groups, could you tell me some of the challenges that you had on a day-to-day basis, or some of the struggles that you faced trying to sort of manage the community side of your business through Facebook groups or inside Facebook, the platform?
Yeah, well, the biggest problem was Facebook. I mean, it's like,
right.
Facebook does what serves Facebook. It doesn't do what serves Facebook's users. It certainly doesn't do what serves Facebook's group admins. It does what serves Facebook. And I got plenty of friends who work in Facebook. The sort of the sidetrack that I've been doing my whole life is tech. I work for Google. I work for America Online. I work for Yahoo. I work for XVII Home. I've done contract work for so many social media companies. And you know, I get that Zuckerberg has his priorities. And the way they handle updating the platform and just moving things around on a fairly weekly basis, so that when you put together a document, okay, here's how to join the group. Here's how to set up your notifications. Here's how to get those notifications via email. Like, I had to create a document, and I teach another class on audiobooks, and my partner in that class loves Facebook groups because it's so easy to set up and easy for him to work it. And I haven't been able to convince him on BuddyBoss yet, but I'm working on him. We have these documents and these videos that show people how to use Facebook, that show people how to overcome their resistance and the confusion and the moving target that is Facebook. It's horrifying. And then you add to that the Cambridge Analytica stuff and the, every rumor and the attacks that occur on social media, on politically, and it's like, oh my God. I started getting emails from people that I would think 5 years ago never even worried about commenting on social media. They were not at all interested in anything that was controversial. They just wanted something easy. And at a time, Facebook was easy and BuddyBoss didn't exist. But man, what a relief when you could move from a platform that was filled with tension and filled with, oh my God, they changed the security settings. Oh my God, I have all these things to update and I've got to send messages to the group that have nothing to do with voiceover and nothing to do with performance or microphones, or it has to do with Facebook, So in addition to that, the distractions of Facebook, the other groups, the other notifications, the ads, your news feed, just in general, the videos and the puppies. And, I don't have to worry about that with BuddyBoss, to the point where several of my students have said, can you add emojis? Just, can you add, animated GIFs? Can you just so we could have some fun? Cause, I get it, but it's like you're at a university. And I don't think any university's online discussion group, if they're using MOOCs or whatever they're using, they're not going to start adding distractions to that. They want you to study, your organic chemistry 204 or whatever it is that you're studying, right? They don't want you, looking at puppy videos. So those are the high points. There's more, but that should do it.
Just a couple to list off. For me, one of the ones that you mentioned for sure that was a big turn off for me was, Facebook moved away from the organic, if an admin posts something, it generally gets seen by a lot of people. They sort of moved further and further away from that to, no, only if you're paying will we show your stuff to your people, let alone that I have given hundreds and hundreds of my hours of time building your Facebook group for you, Mark. You know what I mean? Like, not alone were they not compensating group admins, but they were making it more and more difficult for group admins to actually have visibility in their own groups. And so, I had my group is mostly free. It's about 99% free to be a member of the group, and there's a small percentage of the group that are paying. My business, not my Facebook group necessarily. They pay to advertise into the group. So let's say if you're a headshot photographer and you want to promote your services to this group of 70,000 actors, you pay me a nominal fee, and you're allowed to post 4 times in the Facebook group, let's say. So Facebook just made it so impossible to give those business people any sort of consistency of service whatsoever, that I had no choice but to go and find somewhere else to go and do that. I didn't want the limitations of Facebook's rules impact my ability to deliver a consistent service or consistent value to my group members who had expectations,
Yeah.
you know. And so that was the reason that I made the big. Well, those Facebook groups still exist because they still have some uses, but you know, the majority, the spine of my community is now in BuddyBoss, and we're also a non-profit, so you know, it wasn't making me any money either way, but I needed to get that engagement. I needed to, you know, own that engagement more than I was inside Facebook. So that was the big shift for me.
No, I'll still use Facebook and other social media platforms for marketing. I mean, I'll certainly take advantage of them for finding new students and clients, but man, I'm not going to rely on them to serve those students and clients.
For sure, yeah. Roll me back one step and just explain to everybody. I didn't really outline at the start. What types of content do you have on VOHeroes? Is it just all kind of one-to-one or one-to-many learning content? Give people a sort of an overview of the types of content and interactions that you've got on your site.
So there's a lot of content that's public facing and a whole lot of content that is behind the paywall and only for students. The fact that BuddyBoss lets me use LearnDash, which was what I was using before BuddyBoss came along, and BBPress and BuddyPress for internal messaging and for discussion groups. Those are tools that I'd been trying to figure out how to put together for a long time and do so in a way that looked great. And so in addition to those two things that people pay for, it's also where I have my podcast. And the podcast is around success in performance, whether it's on camera or really with an emphasis on voiceover. But almost everybody that's in my avatar group, they're professional actors. And so there are people who want to pity pat and play at, you know, sort of like, I'm going to join the local community theater and, you know, maybe find a date. I don't know, but the notion of who I teach is professionals. And so the way BuddyBoss handles logging in, logging out, what's protected, what's not protected, what's available to the public at all times, it's a great combination of being able to use it as not only a quote brochure site, but also a site with an awful lot of widely available content and an awful lot of content that you have to be a paying member to get.
Awesome. That's amazing. I also seem to remember that you have like coaching that you manage behind there. I think you might use Amelia to manage scheduling.
Look at you.
I did a little bit of digging.
Yeah, Amelia's great.
Look at me doing my research.
Yeah, I got Amelia from AppSumo, and love Amelia. Nice. I don't know who these guys are, but if they ever wanted to do a podcast with me, I'd do a podcast with them as well, because, you know, Amelia I think was designed for like beauty shops, you know, places, you know, massage parlors. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm using terms from like the 1930s. Oh, I'll meet you at the beauty shop. But it happens to work out well because part of the teaching that I do includes applying what you're learning as a voice talent on a monthly basis in live sessions via Zoom. And that really, like, I got to tell you, I had no idea that when the pandemic came along that BuddyBoss was going to be so useful to me. And frankly, the pandemic has been two of my best years ever, because it struck a spotlight on the notion of working from home. Not because of the virus, but because, oh, that's where that was recorded? Really? And yet I see it on my television? Okay. So being able to tell that story, and being able to tell that story with the look and feel of the site and the way I get to use the styling with BuddyBoss, it just made everything so much smoother and so much better. So yeah, Amelia is one of the things that we use. We also use. I think we're going to be switching over to LearnDash Achievements, but we're currently using GamePress.
Gamey
Yeah.
Press?
So I don't
Yeah.
know. The good news is that all I have to do is go into the control panel and just turn on what I want and turn off what I don't want, you know? And I'm one of these people, I built the site myself. I have a tech guy who works with me who's written a couple of pieces of code that makes things a little bit easier for us, a little bit more specialized for us. But for the most part, everything is just so completely, you know, drag and drop and click, and it's awesome, and you can see the results. So yeah, I'm trying to think what else we use that we don't use on-site. We don't use on-site checkout. We use Samcart. I love Samcart. Samcart is another one of those companies that, you know, came along at just the right time. I happen to know one of the founders, and it's beautiful. And if you guys ever want to integrate with Samcart, oh wait, you do. So LearnDash has a Samcart integration that when somebody buys my course, my curriculum on Samcart, it immediately calls over to LearnDash at the moment that the transaction occurs and says, hey, do me a favor. Put this person in all 40 of these courses. Could you do that for me? Great. Thank you. See ya. So, I mean, there's so many little things like that that make things awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm trying not to derail myself by giving you 1,000 little tiny other ideas.
Oh no!
Of things
Oh no!
you
No!
could
No!
do,
No! No!
you
No!
know,
No! No!
to
Hold
enhance
on,
those
Jason.
things.
When we're done with this, I will extract my pound of flesh from you now that we have a connection. And I will be like, dude, here's a couple of things that I'd really like to figure out how to do better. Is there any way you can hook me up, dude? So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a whole load of other things. You know, the Samcard integration with LearnDash, and obviously if you're using LearnDash to enroll people in groups and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, Groups
yeah,
is great.
There's a whole host of
Groups
things.
is great because Groups
Yeah.
interacts with BuddyBoss groups, with forums. And so again, people get knocked into the groups, the private groups, the private forum groups, because they've matriculated into LearnDash. And so LearnDash goes, hey, BuddyBoss, do me a favor. David just, you know, so it's great. It's just great.
So I wanna take a little step sideways for a second. One of the things you mentioned a few sentences back was you know, that you're a tech guy. You've been working in tech for a number of years, various different companies. One of the things that I didn't mention at the start when I sort of brought you on was that I had a bit of an ulterior motive for bringing you on. You also happen to have your own app in the App Store that is not a BuddyBoss app. Am I right? That's you have you know, an app for actors that was not built on the BuddyBoss platform or whatever. Could you tell our sort of listeners and watchers what that's called and a little bit about what it does and what it's for?
So I'm a guy that when there's a problem, I think, can I fix this? Or do I need to go find something to fix this? And in the last couple of years, I've done the same thing with a particular piece of processing that you need to do before you submit audiobooks. For a while, the tool that I was using wasn't working with the latest version of Mac OS. So I got together with a buddy of mine that I'd known for 30 years, and we created an app called Audio Cupcake. A little simple app that drags and drops and makes your final stuff ready for retail for Audible and for other companies. So that process to me is pretty comfortable. And in 2009, I think it was, I was working on Heroes, and I got an audition to be on another show on NBC called Community. And it was a rush job. They needed me down at Paramount to do the audition within a couple of hours by close of business. And my usual process was when I would get an audition, I would work here in my studio. I would record the lines and I'd leave space for the other person's lines. And then I would record their lines without my lines, and I would play it over and over and over again until I learned my lines, right? Pretty common way of doing that. And I would use voice memo on my iPhone when I wasn't in my studio. But I had to drive down the 101, which is the world's most treacherous highway. And I'm like weaving in and out of traffic, and I'm looking for the soft play button to play it over and over again. I get to Paramount, and my agent calls and goes, "Don't worry about it. They wrote the part out, so you don't have to worry about it." And usually actors are like, "Oh man, I did all that work." And I was like, "Man, I got to go see if there's an app for this." So I was in a mastermind at the time with a bunch of other internet developers and marketers. And I said, "Hey, does anybody know anybody who does app development? Do you even know what app development is?" And one of them actually was doing app development. He goes, I wouldn't be able to do this, but I have a friend. And we created an app to solve that problem of me wanting to do memorization and rehearsing with my scenes, not just for auditions, but to prep to go on set, to go on stage, to go do commercials. And I built all the things into it that I wanted for my life. So I built voiceover stuff into it. And I built process management stuff into it, like who's the casting director? What type of project is it? Is it union? Where's the studio? So it links to Google Maps, so and highlighting and recording the scenes. And I've added other things. It's called Rehearsal Pro, and it's been on sale. It's a paid app, not a free app with ads, because that's not something that would work in my world, and Rehearsal Pro has been on sale since late 2010. And it's sold close to $1 million worth of app. So it's okay, but it's cost a lot to do that as well. It is, as far as I know, the number one most often used app. A-listers use it. So I get to work with really great people. And, if I never sold another copy of the app, it would make me a better actor. It's made me an excellent actor. I will tell you that when I look at how you guys have set up the BuddyBoss app, I don't know how I think I know how you're managing to make it affordable, but for anybody who's watching this, you don't want to take this on your own. Just the world of working with Apple developers, and I've got a great developer who's an awesome guy. I've had other developers in the past who have been nightmares. But it's not just that. It's the world of working with Apple. I don't even have a Google, an Android version of the app. We're thinking about it. But the amount of time and effort and money that I've spent on this app, the benefit is I'm a better actor. Trust me, if I knew that there was this level of effort going in, I don't know if I would have done it. But anyway, that's the story.
That's awesome. So obviously I mentioned to you before, but I was a customer of yours in the original days of Rehearsal. I think Rehearsal 2 was my first
we had
entry
Rehearsal
point before it became Rehearsal.
Well, we had
Pro,
Rehearsal,
I think, right?
and then Apple invented the iPad. And so we had to add all of these new graphic layouts for this bigger screen. And we thought, time to rev the app. We'll call it Rehearsal 2. And it was Rehearsal 2 for about 40 years. But then we really needed to be able to do syncing between devices because people were having multiple devices. They didn't just have an iPhone or an iPad. They had both. And so we had a bunch of things that we wanted to do. We overhauled the app and we called it Rehearsal Pro. And that's where it's been. And we did a Indiegogo campaign. And that was great because I got to tell that whole community audition story again. So I looked you up. You were a really wonderful user. Thank you so much.
For sure. Thanks. So I want to ask you a couple of questions, sort of dive a little deeper into some of the things that you mentioned about your app. For those of you who are listening and watching, what I hope that you'll gain out of this is a bit of perspective on comparing what it's like to develop a bespoke app in the real world out there, not inside the BuddyBoss ecosystem. And hopefully David will be able to share with us some of the some of the challenges and some of the kind of resources and costs and time lengths that went into the creation of and the maintenance of and the updating of that live app in the App Store just so that you can sort of have a little bit of context for all of the things that the BuddyBoss ecosystem takes away or makes easier for you. So David, I'd love to start off just asking you about, from the day you sort of had the gleam in your eye to the day that there was an app in somebody's hand that wasn't yours. How long did that take from sort of start to finish?
So I would think the actual release into the Apple, I think at the time it was called the iTunes Store, was about 6 months. And at the time, it was a fairly simple app compared to what it is now. It's probably 4 times the size that it was then. But man, it was beautiful. It was just awesome. It took a long time. I was lucky in that my original developer was a fan. He was a big Heroes fan. And we made a very, very big mistake at the very beginning. We didn't make it a paid app. We made it a kind of a subscription app before there were subscriptions. So every time you would add a script, it was 99 cents. Or it was $9 a month. Or it was $99 a year. And the way I arrived at those prices was looking at how much money professional actors make. If you're a top of show guest star, you're going to make $7,000 an episode. So $9 is noise in all that to make sure that you know your lines, right? What we hadn't counted on was your situation. Students. They're not getting paid. They're paying to go to a class, right? They don't want to be nickeled and dimed every single time. And it was reflected in our sales. We were making coffee money every day for the first 4 months or so. So then we made the decision, okay, we're going to charge one time, $20. And of course, we were waiting for the cacophony of people. How dare you charge for the app? Why? Apps are supposed to be free. What's wrong with you? You know, it's like, okay, have you ever priced Apple developers? Have you ever priced, iOS developers? Oh my gosh, So, but the day we held our breath and the day we released the paid app that was a one-time payment, $20, we started making mortgage money. So people were like, oh, I only have to pay once? Okay, great. And that was the vast majority of people. And then, so that started the snowball rolling. But from the time that I found Brian, my original developer, who was a game developer, by the way, which made the app really smooth, to getting it into the store in that shape was about a year. And it was, it was back and forth. He was doing his own thing with his company, and it was kind of a side gig for him. So, yeah, did that answer your question for you?
Yeah, for sure. The one thing I wanted to ask you in addition to that was, only if you're comfortable sharing, what was the sort of cost investment to get it to that point?
So
like, you can give me a ballpark figure if you want.
We did revenue share. And so if I had to pay for the number of hours that he spent on the app rather than revenue share, based on his hourly rate at the time, which I think was $240 per hour. And now it's way above that for the premier developers. They're charging like lawyer money. It probably would have been in the $100,000 to $150,000 range, which is cheap compared to a lot of apps and how much they cost. Just the barrier to entry in doing an app these days, even though there's all these services that will do an app for you, they're not doing bespoke, as you said, bespoke apps, which is one of my favorite British Isles phrase that nobody uses here, but that I love. Nobody's doing that. They're doing generic types of apps that do types of things that are easy to generalize. But if you had to do an app from scratch, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, if you're doing it right. Because it's not just building the app. It's designing, and luckily I had a background in UI UX, so designing the user interface, designing the workflow, designing how the app actually takes you from moment to moment to moment, and the user journey. That's the biggest thing that kills apps, is that nobody knows how to use them. and nobody pays any attention to that stuff, whereas you guys do. So that's kind of cool.
Awesome. If you mentioned that you were the sort of UX UI designer yourself, that you were doing a lot of that stuff. I imagine that, in the previous answer about pricing your partner's development skills, if you had to add your kind of UI and UX, if you had to outsource that as well, what are we talking?
$100 million,
like the same again, probably.
I'm very
in
expensive.
cost.
No, I would have added a very significant percentage to the amount. And then also I did my own marketing. I do my own help desk support. I mean, it's just me and my developer who does the vast majority of the work. I actually release the app. So I do some of the on-site, on the developer site, on the Apple developer site release work. And I understand how that works, but I don't know how to do Swift coding. I don't know how to do that stuff. I guess I could learn, but I kind of feel like I got what I do and he's got what he does, and that's how it is. But if I had to pay for all this, I probably wouldn't have made the app.
Yeah, that's a very common thing that a lot of our other customers, particularly ones who end up in the BuddyBoss agency, where they get like customized features built just for them, where that doesn't kind of fit the main mold of the BuddyBoss app in any way, and they want something very specific. They very often come out the other end and say, listen, I could afford this customization, which is a premium, but if I had to pay that kind of money to build my foundational app, my app simply wouldn't exist. It's not that I would have gone and I would have found the money, or I would have gotten investors from here, or I would have gotten an angel. No, it's just the idea wouldn't have gained legs if I simply had to bear that burden of that cost. So yeah, for us, that's one of the big advantages is we get to sort of empower people on our end to realize their ideas in a way that was never before possible. Tell me a little bit more about. So you mentioned that you do some of the release work, let's say, to kind of generalize, to umbrella term it. So how does maintaining your app work? Does your developer do maintenance releases on a regular basis and then sort of pass the files back to you and you manage them? How does the sort of maintenance and updates process work?
Yeah. No, his role is developer on the store. So he uploads the final compile, and before it gets uploaded, I have a very dear friend who used to work for GoDaddy as a software tester. And again, he was a fan. He continues to be a fan. I don't think my career is over yet, but he gives me a friend and family rate for a really good run through on testing. And he's also a sort of a pro-am actor. So he gets the industry. I'm in a very specialized situation. I am my own audience. I am my own customer. Often people will create apps for whatever they think is going to give them good keyword research, right? But they're not really, like they're doing an app for skiers, but they don't ski. My app is for actors, and I'm working at a fairly high level as an actor. So I have a visibility into how the app is to be used and how it works best in the current workflow of a professional actor that is kind of mysterious to some people. It's amazing the kinds of suggestions that I'll get about updating the app and adding new features to the app. And people don't know about things like feature creep, and they don't know about things like not just knowing what your customers want, but also having the confidence to know what they may not even know they need and giving it to them anyways. So we determine what we're going to do, and we haven't, we're in a pretty mature space with the app. I like where it is. It's a little too complicated for me. There's things that I think maybe I'm going to take away. But when that happens, my developer gets involved, my tester gets involved, the several hats that I wear of, I've got to redo the help files, I've got to redo the support area, I've got to redo the menus, I've got to redo the interface, I've got to redo all of the marketing promotion. I've got to do new videos. I've got to do new, like, it's a thing. And it's expensive. Even though I have a developer who is reasonable. And most developers are not solopreneurs. Most developers are on a team. Many times overseas to Americans. They're not domestic. Maybe they are domestic. You're talking more zeros at that point, right? So it's a big, long thing. And then getting it just right isn't going to be finalized until it's too late. Until you put it out and the public gets a hold of it and starts beating on it in the real world, and that's when you find out what you have to fix. Or Apple changes iOS. Oh, welcome to that, right? Like, there are things that we do with PDF files, because most of the scripts come in PDFs. There are things that we do with audio. Apple has libraries that sometimes change. And sometimes they don't send me a personal email saying, hey, look, David, we know that you do things with PDFs and audio in your app. So we just want to let you know that we're changing this library. Oh, and by the way, this other company that has a library, they're changing their library too to match our changes to our code base. And then there's Swift as opposed to C++ or C. Okay, Objective-C, it's like, all of these things you guys have made invisible. And I don't think people realize the value of that. I am a proud BuddyBoss affiliate because of how you handle your front-facing marketing and how high quality your product is. And I don't think people realize how easy you make their lives with both the platform, the theme, and the app. So I'll do more prostrating and worship at the altar of BuddyBoss here shortly, but just know that if you take advantage of BuddyBoss's app, you are also taking advantage of their taking on the crap that you will never have to experience as an app developer.
I love it. That's awesome. That's a clip right there for sure. We're going to take that chunk out. One of the things I just wanted to put a cap on that last segment is you described that you are in a pretty mature space with your app at this stage, that it's been out and in the hands of users and it's had many years of development at this point. So it would be very useful to know, even in its mature stage now, what's the sort of yearly cost to you of maintaining, not even necessarily adding new features, let's say, but just of maintaining and keeping it functioning as good as it needs to be?
I'm thinking that it would be the equivalent of probably $100,000 to $150,000 a year.
Right. That was the sort of ballpark I was thinking too.
Yeah.
I think the reason I asked you that is because sometimes it's very easy for a new app developer to imagine that all of the cost is at the front end, and that the research and development costs are the big hurdle. But what they then don't realize is building your app version 0.1 is only the entry point to the world of developing and owning an app, and that even just to keep your app as it is functioning well, not adding anything new or changing anything, even that costs significant sums. It's not just a nominal yearly fee like paying your hosting fee for your website. It's significantly more just to keep it afloat, sort of thing. Does that sort of ring true?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when I said we're in a mature space, I was speaking more about features and benefits, but certainly the code base, we're renovating the code base right now to take it into Swift. Because it's kind of a melange of other things. And for those of you that are listening going, what? It's okay. It's just going to cost some money. But yeah, the upkeep is, I love the acting community. And if there wasn't a component of what I'm doing with this app that was meant to be a gift to the community, then I likely wouldn't have done it, because it's just such a financial undertaking. It's an effort undertaking. There are other ways of learning your lines. I could go back to the old way because I still have a studio and I still have a microphone and I still have a computer. So if there wasn't that component, then I don't know. It's a big ask. It's a big lift. So my hat's off to you guys.
Yeah, nice. Just to sort of round out the end of that corner, if you can give me a quick enough answer to this one, if you woke up tomorrow and you opened up the app and you decided, I don't like the way this menu is arranged, like something pretty minor, or I don't like the name of this menu, how long do you think it would take you to go from, I woke up and I want to change something minor? How long would it take you to get that into the hands of a user?
Probably a few
Going
days.
through your development team, their time, all that stuff.
Yeah, probably a few days. If it was something that minor, because my developers are really good. He's a really good guy, and he gets it. And so he probably could do a build within a day. But then it would be, the App Store, and it would be letting people know, and it would be their choice of when they update. And so, I don't know, probably a week or two,
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I don't know if you know how. I don't think you've seen the inside of the BuddyBoss app, kind of from a management or an admin side. But once you've launched your BuddyBoss app in the App Store, all of the cosmetic stuff is done via API. So you hit save in your dashboard in WordPress, and the app automatically changes for every single one of your users.
So it sounds like you're using a lot of web views, right?
No, we're not. This is all native. All native.
See what I did? I set you up there to hit a home run. So
nice.
Sometimes,
nice. Yeah, well
sometimes app developers will do web views, where it's kind of basically using the app as a very glorified browser, and that can be an issue. There's whole libraries of videos on YouTube on how to make your web view app look like a real app, whereas BuddyBoss uses APIs, which is fantastic. So again, one more reason. So awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So I was thinking, like, in comparison, for something minor like that, you wouldn't even need to go to a developer, have a chat with anybody. In most cases, you don't even need to do a rebuild, because when somebody opens their BuddyBoss app in their hand, it pulls in the elements dynamically from the API, and so it doesn't even need a rebuild or any time at all to do those kinds of things.
Great.
So that's very useful for everybody to sort of kind of have a little bit of a context on comparing a sort of a bespoke, to use your new favorite word, your word of the day, app versus the BuddyBoss app builder. So yeah, thanks a lot for that, and I really appreciate you being very transparent with your details. That was really helpful.
Sure.
So jumping back to your actual BuddyBoss site then, what's been the biggest benefit or the biggest highlight or benefit to you personally of building your site for your community?
Single point of control, and integrated and centralized tools to control the site and to control the look and the feel and the performance, and mostly the happiness of my users. There is a fatigue to using multiple apps, multiple tabs open in a browser, multiple interfaces. There's a fatigue to that I wanted to avoid. And BuddyBoss lets me do that. And, for me, if I could, one thing I would love to be able to have BuddyBoss do is upload MP3 files and WAV files as, in addition to other file types. Because for me, I have to use a plugin for that. But you can't have everything, right? So I get that. But for the most part, it's this centralized control. And then being able to make enhancements with your partner plugins and people that you've worked with and that understand you as well, that know about BuddyBoss. There's an ecosystem that I can rely on, and I have relied on it, and I've now relied on it for years, which I didn't expect. I will tell you this: when I first started using BuddyBoss, I thought, man, if I could just get one good year out of this platform before I have to go find something else. Because that's what I'd had to do before. I had to go find something else. I haven't had to go find something else. And I thank you so much for that. And I also thank you for the lifetime package. So, not that you gave me the lifetime package. Awesome. I paid for the lifetime package. But man, thank you.
You paid with good money, yeah.
Good money.
That's awesome. Listen, David, thank you so much for your time thus far. Do we have 5 minutes more to give you some lightning round questions?
I've got another 45 minutes. I'm good.
Do you need to shoot off? Okay, David, what is the one book that you think that all entrepreneurs or business owners or community leaders should read?
Brief.
Why?
Or Essentialism. Either one of those. We spend an awful lot of time trying to be complete as opposed to being succinct. And Brief and Essentialism are two somewhat similar books that talk about just that, being cogent enough and not overwhelming our audience with what we're telling them. Just amazing. My life was changed. I've got many others, Atomic Habits, the Checklist Manifesto, anything that Andrew Huberman is doing right now with, he's a neurobiologist at Stanford about, mind-body connection. So there's my one book.
Yeah, your one book. It's all right. I've read 50% of those, and the other 50% are now on my list. Essentialism is one of my number one recommendations as well. So, okay, what's your favorite business or motivational quote?
God, there's just so many. Can it be from me?
It can, yeah.
Because the one thing that I rely on more than anything is my definition of success. I think it encompasses an awful lot of what people miss. And my definition of success is very simple. Do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And if you do that, you can't help but be successful. You just can't help but be successful. Now, the trick is knowing what works and what doesn't, not just assuming, oh, well, that must work. That can never work. You have to test things, but do more of what works and less of what doesn't, and you can't help but be successful.
I love it that you've hit two birds with one stone there, because how do you define success was question number 7 of the short questions. So you've managed to hit two birds with one stone. It was like you read my mind. So as a teacher email. Or as an instructor, or my email, yeah, exactly, yeah. As a teacher or as an instructor yourself, where is the number one place that you go online to learn more about building your business?
I think it's a combination of things, but if I had to pick one only, it would be YouTube with a very sensitive filter. Very sensitive filter. I am really, really inured to these slicky boys who have taken courses on how to do great YouTube videos. I think that people who learn how to do great YouTube videos could benefit greatly from also getting better at what they do for a living. I'm sick and tired of seeing people say, here's how to do YouTube videos. You don't even have to be an expert at what you do. You just have to have great thumbnails, and you have to have a DSLR camera and a prime lens and a great microphone, and you need to know how to do titles, and you need to know how to do, How about be really, really awesome at your subject matter, so that you can wear the title SME, subject matter expert, as opposed to subject matter video maker. right? So
Yeah.
that's probably the number one place, but also my masterminds.
Mm.
My peer group is the living proof of you are the result of the best 5 people you surround yourself with. So I don't know. Did that answer
I'll
your
also take
question?
that one as one of your additional quotes that you
Great.
when you gave yourself a quote. We'll use that one too. That's a good one. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Jim Rohn, I think. Was that quote? I don't know. We'll look that
It's
one
been
up.
attributed to various people.
Jason Broderick, I think, was the
I
genius
see.
behind that quote.
I see what you did there.
So, what is the one thing that you wish you knew before you started your site or your community?
I wish I knew how awesome people can be. I spent much of my life thinking that everybody was evil. And it took me a while to learn that your community is filled with amazing, awesome people. I went in very defensive, very concerned about who's going to steal from me, who's going to take from me, who's going to complain about me, who's going to, be a snarky online about me. And oddly enough, being my own help support person is what changed that. I absolutely kill people with kindness. When they're upset with me, I'm like, I completely understand. I'd feel exactly the same way. I really would. And part of it is acting, but part of it is actually genuinely stepping into the notion that people want to do their best. They want to do the number one thing on their menu. Sometimes the number one thing on their menu is pretty heinous. But I think if I knew that before, I likely would have experienced much greater success.
Hmm. I like it. I like it. That's good. That's impactful.
I'm sorry, I
So
was
if
getting
I was
emotional
to
there at
give
the
you,
beginning. When
no,
you asked the
honestly,
question, I was just
it's good.
it just struck me all at once. So, which happens
Hmm.
sometimes.
I guess not to toot my own horn too loudly, but I guess it's a good question then, right? If it connects and gets an answer as heartfelt as that.
I think that one lesson that I'd like to leave people with is your journey is going to change your rule set. And if I could just take a couple of moments here and share, when you're
Of
first
course
starting
you can,
off
yeah.
as an actor, you're hoping for success in that your acting coach will say, good job. Or your scene partner will say, oh, that was great. Loved it. And then the rules change. You're hoping that you'll get an audition. And then you start getting an audition or 2 or 5, and the rules change. You're hoping for a callback. You're hoping you're good enough that you can go to an audition and hopefully you can get a callback. And then after a while, you're hoping for a booking, just a tiny, gimme hot dog vendor number 2. That's all I want. I just want a credit. And then the rules change again. And this is the growth of an entrepreneur. The rules will change from the beginning of your journey to wherever your journey takes you. And as long as you're open to those rules changing and your reassessing of what success means to you, you're going to be fine. But one of the biggest mistakes you can get wrapped up in is hanging on to the metrics of success from earlier in your journey. Everything's going to change, and it's going to be great.
I love it. I love it. David, it was an absolute pleasure getting to chat to you, and I'm sure it's going to be a pleasure for all of our listeners and viewers to watch this back. And thank you very much for being so generous with your time. Tell everyone where can they go to discover more about you, discover more about your projects, both your BuddyBoss site and your app. If anyone's out there interested, just give everyone a little bit of online direction for where they can find more.
Yeah. So my full name is David H. Lawrence, XVII. And if you go to davidhlawrencexvii.com, it's a site that's built for casting people to see what I do And then there's links to everything else that I do. If you want to see VOHeroes, that's fine. It's linked there. If you want to see the other things that I do, rehearsal and so on, it's all there. But that's where you can go and get a really good idea of what I'm all about.
Awesome. We'll have everybody jumping on top of your socials now, just asking you questions and asking you for wisdom. Thank you so much, David. I'll have all those links and everything that you mentioned will be linked in the resources anyway, into the description if you're watching on YouTube, or in the resources on the site, or in the podcast audio player, wherever you're listening to this episode. David, thank you so much again, and thanks to all our listeners for sticking around. Thank you very much.
See you later.
That was David H. Lawrence the 17th sharing with us the true cost of developing and maintaining an app without BuddyBoss. If you run an online course, community, or membership site powered by BuddyBoss and you'd like to feature in an upcoming podcast episode, head over to buddyboss.com/podcast and fill out the form to get in touch. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to let us know, then make sure to hit that like button below and then leave us a quick comment and let me know what was the one most valuable thing that you learned from this podcast episode. That's it for me. Until next time.